Enrique Vasconcelos had everything: wealth, power, and a name that commanded respect. But when a visit to a humble shelter leads him face to face with the love he abandoned 20 years ago, and the daughter he never knew existed, his world shatters. Will he reclaim the family he lost, or is it too late? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The rain fell gently over the city as Enrique Vasconcelos's luxury car pulled up to the curb. He looked out the window at the modest building with the faded sign that read, Abrigo Esperanza, Hope Shelter. Enrique adjusted his expensive watch and straightened his tie. At 45, he was one of the most successful men in the financial sector, with a fortune that kept growing year after year. "Are you sure you want to do this, sir?" asked his driver, Roberto. "Carlos insisted I see this place," Enrique replied, referring to his oldest friend. "Says they're doing amazing work. 20 minutes, then we're heading to the meeting." As he stepped out of the car, a few raindrops landed on his custom suit. He frowned slightly before making his way to the entrance. Inside, the shelter was busy with volunteers serving meals and helping families. The director, an older woman named Donna Marta, greeted him enthusiastically. "Mr. Vasconcelos, what an honor. Carlos told us you might stop by." Enrique nodded, feeling uncomfortable with the attention. "I just wanted to see what Carlos has been supporting all these years." "Of course. Let me show you around." As they walked through the shelter, Enrique listened politely to stories about the families who had found help there. Single mothers, unemployed fathers, elderly people without pensions. The shelter seemed to be a last resort for many. "Most people are just going through a rough patch," Donna Marta explained. "Like the young mother over there." Enrique followed, her gaze to a corner of the room where a woman sat quietly, holding 2 sleeping babies in her arms. Something about her made him stop in his tracks. Even from a distance, something seemed familiar. "Hey, excuse me," he murmured to Donna Marta as he walked closer to the woman. She was thin, with dark circles under her eyes, dressed in simple clothes that had seen better days. Her long brown hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, but as she looked up, Enrique felt the floor shift beneath his feet. Those eyes, he would recognize those eyes anywhere. "Julia." His voice came out as barely a whisper. The woman stared at him, her expression changing from confusion to shock to disbelief. "Enrique," she whispered back. 20 years melted away in an instant. Julia had been his first love, his only true love. They had met in college, young and full of dreams. They had planned a life together before he received the scholarship to study abroad. He had promised to return to her, but he never did. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice trembling. Before he could answer, one of the babies stirred, and Julia automatically adjusted her hold to comfort the child. That's when Enrique noticed the simple silver ring on her finger. His heart stopped. It was the ring he had given her all those years ago, a promise of his love and commitment. "You still wear it," he said, his eyes fixed on the ring. "It's all I had left," she replied softly. Enrique couldn't take his eyes off the babies. Twins. It seemed a boy and a girl. They appeared to be about 6 months old, with soft brown hair and peaceful expressions as they slept. "Are they?" He couldn't finish the question, but Julia understood. "Yes," she answered. "They're yours." The world around Enrique disappeared. The noise of the shelter faded into the background. His knees weakened and he sat down heavily on a nearby chair. "How is that possible?" he managed to ask. "It's been 20 years. Julia looked down. "These aren't the only ones, Enrique. We have a daughter. She's 19. 19, Enrique repeated, stunned. "You were pregnant when I left?" She nodded. "I tried to tell you. I called, I wrote letters, but you changed your number and the letters came back unopened." My father, Enrique realized with sudden clarity. He must have intercepted everything. He never wanted us together. He said you weren't good enough for a Vasconcelos. Tears formed in Julia's eyes. "I raised Maria by myself. We were doing okay until last year." "What happened?" "Last year, I got sick, cancer. I couldn't work for months during treatment. We lost our apartment. Maria had to drop out of college to help with the babies." "The babies?" Enrique looked at them again, still trying to comprehend. How? After my divorce 5 years ago, I ran into your brother Andre at a business conference. He looked so much like you. We talked about the past. One thing led to another. She paused. We dated for a while, but when I got pregnant, he disappeared. Just like you did. The revelation hit Enrique like a physical blow. His own brother had abandoned Julia too. Where is Maria now, he asked. She works 2 jobs, daytime at a cafe, nights at a supermarket. She's saving up for us to rent a place. We've only been at the shelter for 3 weeks. Enrique's phone buzzed in his pocket. Automatically, he pulled it out. Roberto was texting him. Meeting in 30 minutes, sir. He put the phone away without responding. I had no idea, he said, his voice thick with emotion. All these years I threw myself into business, building my empire. I told myself I was too busy to think about the past. And I was too proud to hunt you down, Julia replied, even when things got bad. One of the babies woke up and began to fuss. Julia shifted him in her arms, whispering soothing words. What are their names? Enrique asked. Lucas and Sophia. My mother's name, Enrique said softly. You remembered. I never forgot anything about you, Enrique. He reached out tentatively and touched Lucas's tiny hand. The baby's fingers curled around his, and Enrique felt something break inside him. All the walls he had built around his heart over the years crumbled in an instant. I have a family, he whispered, the realization overwhelming him. His phone buzzed again insistently. Without looking at it, he turned it off completely. Julia, I thought he struggled to find the right words. I don't know what to say except I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. It's ancient history, she said, but her eyes told a different story. No, it's not, Enrique insisted. It's the present. It's my family. Our family. He looked around the shelter, seeing it through new eyes. The thought of Julia and his children living here, struggling while he lived in luxury, filled him with shame. This is my fault, he said. I should have been there. I should have known. You're here now, Julia said cautiously. But why? What brought you to this shelter today of all days? My friend Carlos, Enrique replied. He's on the board here. He's been asking me to visit for months. Julia smiled slightly. Carlos Mendez. He's been very kind to us, but he never mentioned knowing you. He probably didn't make the connection, Enrique said. I never told him about you. I never told anyone about you. It hurt too much. Sophia began to stir as well, and soon both babies were awake and demanding. Attention. Julia looked overwhelmed, trying to manage them both. May I? Enrique asked, holding out his arms. After a moment's hesitation, Julia handed him Sophia. The baby looked up at him with curious eyes that looked exactly like his own. Enrique felt tears forming. He had missed so much, his daughter's entire childhood, and now these babies, his brother's children, but also his family, needed him. I have a penthouse downtown, he said suddenly. 5 bedrooms, more space than I know what to do with. You could all come stay there while we figure things out. Enrique, I can't just... Please, he interrupted. Let me help. Let me try to make this right. Before she could answer, the shelter door opened and a young woman walked in. She was clearly exhausted, still wearing a cafe uniform. Her long dark hair pulled back in a style that reminded Enrique of how Julia used to wear hers in college. The young woman hurried over to them. Mom, I got off early and thought I'd... She stopped when she noticed Enrique holding Sophia. Their eyes met, and Enrique knew immediately who she was. Maria had his mother's cheekbones and his own stubborn chin. She was beautiful, and the sight of her made his heart ache with all the years he had missed. Maria, he said, his voice trembling. I know who you are, she interrupted, her voice cold. I've seen your picture in magazines. Maria, Julia said softly. This is your father. He's not my father, Maria replied sharply. A father is someone who's there. He's just the man who left you pregnant and alone. Enrique couldn't argue with that. She was right. I didn't know, he said. I swear to you, I didn't know about you. If I had... What? Maria challenged. You would have come back. You would have chosen us over your fancy life. Yes, Enrique said without hesitation. Yes, I would have. Maria looked skeptical. Well, it's too late now. We've managed just fine without you. Maria, Julia said gently. People make mistakes, even big ones. And some mistakes can't be fixed, Maria replied, taking Sofia from Henrique's arms. The baby immediately snuggled against her sister, familiar with her touch. Henrique felt the loss acutely as his daughter took the baby away from him, but he also understood. He hadn't earned the right to hold her. I want to help, he said, not because I feel obligated, but because I want to be part of your lives, if you'll let me. We don't need your charity, Maria said proudly. It's not charity, Henrique insisted. It's family. The word hung in the air between them. Family. Something Henrique had convinced himself he didn't need, too focused on building his financial empire to worry about personal connections. Now, faced with the family he didn't know he had, he realized how empty his life had been. Just come to my place for tonight, he pleaded. It's going to rain harder and the babies should be somewhere comfortable. We can talk more there, figure out what's next. Julia and Maria exchanged looks, having one of those silent conversations that mothers and daughters perfect over years together. One night, Julia finally agreed, but we're not making any promises beyond that. That's all I ask, Henrique said. He pulled out his phone and called Roberto. Bring the car around and call the penthouse. Tell Elena to prepare all the guest rooms. As they gathered their meager belongings, Henrique noticed Donna Marta watching. From across the room with a knowing smile, he walked over to her. Thank you, he said quietly, for taking care of them when I wasn't there to do it. Sometimes life gives us second chances, Mr. Vasconcelos, she replied. Not everyone recognizes them when they come. I won't waste this one, he promised, pressing a check into her hand. For the shelter, and I'll be back to discuss more permanent support. Outside, the rain had stopped, and a ray of sunshine broke through the clouds as Roberto held the car door open. Henrique helped Julia into the back seat with the babies, while Maria reluctantly slid in after them. As the car pulled away from the curb, Henrique knew his life would never be the same. The meeting he was missing would cost him millions, but for the first time in 20 years, money was the furthest thing from his mind. He had found something far more valuable. He had found his family, and he wasn't going anywhere this time. The Tainchi elevator ride to Henrique's penthouse was tense and silent. Maria stood stiffly, holding Lucas while Julia carried Sofia. Henrique kept glancing at them, hardly believing they were real. When the doors opened directly into his penthouse, he heard Maria's small gasp. The space was enormous, with floor to ceiling, windows offering a spectacular view of the city. Welcome, Henrique said awkwardly, stepping aside to let them enter. Elena, his housekeeper for the past decade, was waiting for them. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of the babies, but her professional demeanor remained intact. The guest rooms are ready, sir, she said. Would your guests like refreshments? Yes, please, Henrique replied. And Elena, this is Julia, and Maria, and the twins, Lucas and Sofia. Elena nodded politely. I'll bring some tea and snacks, and perhaps some milk for the little ones. They're on formula, Julia said quietly. I have some in the bag, but not much. I'll send Roberto to the store right away, Henrique said quickly. What brand do they use? The cheapest one, Maria answered, her tone challenging. Henrique nodded, feeling the sting of her words. Roberto will get the best formula available, and anything else you need for the babies. After Elena left, Henrique showed them to the guest rooms. The largest one had been prepared for Julia and the twins, with 2 portable cribs already set up. How did you get baby cribs so quickly? Julia asked, surprised. Elena is very efficient, Henrique replied. She probably ordered them from a store that delivers immediately. Maria examined the cribs. These are expensive, the kind you see in those celebrity baby magazines. Maria, Julia said in a warning tone. It's fine, Henrique assured her. She has every right to be angry. Maria's room was next door to Julia's. It was elegantly decorated like something from a luxury hotel. The bathroom has everything you might need, Henrique said. If there's anything missing, just ask. Maria placed her small bag on the bed. Our whole life fits in one bag now, she said quietly, more to herself than to anyone else. Henrique felt a pang in his chest. I'm sorry, I know it doesn't change anything, but I truly am sorry. You're right, Maria replied. It doesn't change anything. Back in the living room, Henrique found Julia sitting on the sofa, looking out at the city, view with Sofia in her arms. Lucas was asleep in one of the portable cribs that Elena had moved to the living room. She hates me, Henrique said, sitting down across from her. She doesn't know you, Julia corrected. She's just protecting herself, and me. She had to grow up too fast. She did, Julia agreed. When I got sick, she was the one who took care of everything. She was only 18, but she became the adult. Henrique leaned forward. Tell me about her. What was she like growing up? A small smile appeared on Julia's face. Stubborn, just like you, and smart. Top of her class all through school. She was in her first year of medical school when I got sick. Medical school? She wants to be a doctor. Since she was 10 years old. She never wavered. Henrique felt a surge of pride, quickly followed by sadness for all he had missed. And you? What happened after? After I didn't come back? Julia sighed. I finished college while pregnant. My parents helped with Maria for the first few years. Then I got a job teaching at a private school. We were doing okay. You got married? When Maria was 14, Eduardo was a good man, an engineer, but he wanted his own children and I couldn't have any more. The doctors discovered it when I tried to get pregnant. It put a strain on our marriage. I'm sorry. Then 5 years ago we divorced. That's when I ran into Andre at the education conference. He was representing your company's foundation. Henrique nodded. The Vasconcelos Foundation. It was my mother's project before she died. Andre and I, it was like finding a piece of you again, Julia admitted. He looked so much like you. But he wasn't you. He never told me, Henrique said, anger rising in his voice. Not once did he mention seeing you. When I told him I was pregnant, he said he couldn't handle it. That he was seeing someone else, someone his family approved of. He gave me money for an abortion and disappeared. She stroked Sofia's cheek gently. But I couldn't do it. They were a miracle to me, a second chance at having a family. Henrique's hands clenched into fists. I'm going to kill him. It won't change anything, Julia said, echoing Maria's words. Elena entered with a tray of tea and sandwiches. Roberto has returned with the baby supplies, sir. Shall I put them in Ms. Julia's room? Yes, thank you, Elena, Henrique replied. As they ate, Henrique asked more questions about Maria, soaking up every detail about the daughter he never knew. Julia told him how Maria had excelled in school, how she had played the piano, how she had volunteered at a hospital, even before deciding to become a doctor. She's amazing, Henrique said. You did an incredible job raising her. We struggled sometimes, but we were happy, Julia replied, until I got sick. What kind of cancer was it? Breast cancer, stage 3 when they caught it. The treatment was aggressive. I couldn't work for almost a year. But you're okay now? Henrique asked, concern evident in his voice. In remission, 6 months cancer-free. Maria appeared in the doorway, freshly showered and wearing clean clothes. She looked slightly less hostile, but her guard was still up. The twins need a bath, she said to Julia. I can take care of it. I'll help, Julia said, standing up. With Sofia. I can help too, Henrique offered. Maria looked like she might object, but instead she nodded stiffly. Bathing the twins turned out to be a chaotic affair. Lucas splashed happily while Sofia cried at first, then settled down when Henrique sang an old lullaby his mother used to sing to. Him? You have a nice voice, Julia commented, surprised. My mother made us take music lessons, he explained. Andre was better at it than I was. At the mention of Andre, Maria's expression hardened. Does he live in the city too? He has. An apartment downtown, Henrique answered. But he travels a lot for the company. Does he know we're here? Maria asked. No, I haven't spoken to him yet. Are you going to? Henrique met her gaze directly. Do you want me to? Maria looked at the twins, her expression softening. They deserve to know their father, even if he's a jerk who ran away. Like me, Henrique said quietly. For the first time, Maria looked at him without anger, just sadness. Why didn't you come back? The real reason. Enrique wrapped a towel around Lucas before answering. I got caught up in proving myself. My father always said I'd never amount to anything without his help. When I went abroad, I was determined to succeed on my own. But what about love? Maria asked. Didn't that matter? I convinced myself it was a distraction, that I needed to focus on my career first. By the time I realized how empty success was without someone to share it with, I thought it was too late, that your mother would have moved on. She did move on, Maria said, but she never forgot you. Later that night, after the twins were asleep and Maria had retired to her room, Enrique and Julia sat in the living room again, this time with glasses of wine. What happens now? Julia asked. Whatever you want, Enrique replied. You and the children can stay here as long as you need. I can help Maria go back to medical school. We can find the best doctors for your follow-up care. And what do you want, Enrique? He looked at her, really looked at her. 20 years had passed, but he could still see the young woman he had fallen in love with. She was still beautiful to him, perhaps even more so now. I want a chance, he said simply. A chance to know my daughter, a chance to help with the twins, a chance with you, if that's not asking too much. I don't know if that's possible, Julia admitted. Too much has happened. I understand. But we can start slow, one day at a time. Before she could reply, Enrique's phone rang. He glanced at it and frowned. It's Andre. Julia tensed visibly. Enrique answered the call on speaker. Andre, what is it? Where were you today? Andre's voice came through. Dad is furious. You missed the meeting with the Japanese investors. Something more important came up. More important than $100 million deal. Are you crazy? Maybe I am, Enrique replied calmly. But I need to see you tomorrow, my place, 10 o'clock. Why? What's going on? You'll find out tomorrow. Enrique hung up without waiting for a response. He doesn't know we're here, Julia said, looking worried. He needs to face his responsibilities just like I'm facing mine, Enrique replied firmly. It's going to be messy. Life is messy. I've spent too many years pretending it isn't. He reached across and took her hand. 20 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life by not coming back to you. I don't want to waste any more time. Julia didn't pull her hand away. You've changed. Seeing you again. Seeing our daughter, the twins. It's like waking up from a long sleep. I've been going through the motions, thinking success and money were enough. They weren't. A cry came from the baby monitor on the table. Julia stood up. That's Sophia. She always wakes up around this time. Let me, Enrique said. You get some rest. To his surprise, she nodded. She usually just needs to be rocked a bit. In the darkened guest room, Enrique carefully lifted Sophia from her crib. She whimpered, her tiny face scrunched up. Shh, it's okay, he whispered, rocking her gently. Your grandpa is here. The word felt strange on his tongue. Grandpa. He was a grandfather to his brother's children. The twisted irony of it might have made him laugh if it wasn't so sad. He walked Sophia around the room, humming softly. Gradually, her cries subsided, and she looked up at him with curious eyes. You look like your mother, he told her. She was very beautiful. Still is. Sophia's tiny hand reached up and grabbed his finger with surprising strength. I'm not going anywhere, he promised her. I'm going to be here for you and your brother, and for your mum and your sister. I promise. From the doorway, Maria watched silently as the billionaire made promises to a baby. There was something in his eyes, something genuine that made her want to believe him. But she had learned the hard way that promises were easily made and easily broken. Still, as she watched him with Sophia, a tiny crack appeared in the wall she had built around her heart. The next morning, the penthouse was filled with the sounds of babies and the smell of coffee. Enrique, who usually spent his mornings reading financial reports in silence, found himself changing Lucas's diaper while Julia fed Sophia. Maria emerged from her room dressed in her cafe uniform. I have to go to work. You don't have to, Enrique said. I can call them, explain the situation. The situation? That my long-lost billionaire father suddenly appeared, and now I don't need a job anymore? She shook her head. I don't take handouts. It's not a handout. It's family, she finished for him. So you keep saying. But a family isn't created overnight, Henrique. It stung that she called him by his name, not dad or even father, but he nodded in understanding. You're right, it takes time, but at least let me have Roberto drive you. She hesitated, then nodded. Fine, but just for today. After she left, Henrique's phone buzzed with a message from his assistant, Patricia. Your father is demanding to speak with you, urgent. He typed back, tell him I'm dealing with a family matter. Almost immediately his phone rang. It was his father, Eduardo Vasconcelos Sr. What family matter? The older man demanded without preamble. You don't have a family. Actually, I do, Henrique replied calmly, and I just found them. What nonsense is this? You've never even been married. I'll explain everything soon, but right now I have something important to deal with. More important than your responsibilities to this company, to our name. Yes, Henrique said firmly, much more important. He hung up, something he had never dared to do before when speaking with his father. Julia looked at him with concern. That was your father, the great Eduardo Vasconcelos? The one and only, Henrique confirmed, still trying to control everything. And everyone. He never approved of me, Julia remembered. He said a scholarship student from a public school wasn't good enough for a Vasconcelos heir. He was wrong, Henrique said, about so many things. The elevator chimed, announcing a visitor. Henrique checked his watch. It was only 9 o'clock. Andre was early, but it wasn't Andre who stepped into the penthouse. It was Eduardo Vasconcelos Sr. himself, leaning on an elegant cane, his white hair perfectly combed, his expensive suit immaculate as always. His cold eyes scanned the room, settling on Julia and the babies with obvious disdain. So this is the family matter, he said, his voice dripping with contempt. I should have known. Henrique moved to stand between his father and Julia. What are you doing here? Making sure you haven't completely lost your mind. The old man walked further into the room, his cane tapping on the marble floor. You missed $100 million meeting for this? This has a name, Henrique said, his voice hard. This is Julia, and these are her children, Lucas and Sophia. Eduardo's eyes narrowed. I remember you, he said to Julia, the gold digger from your university days. Don't speak to her that way, Henrique warned. Julia stood up, her back straight, her eyes meeting Eduardo's without flinching. It's been a long time, Mr. Vasconcelos. Not long enough, apparently. He turned to Henrique. I thought I had solved this problem 20 years ago. What does that mean? Henrique asked, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. It means, Eduardo said, that I made sure your little romance didn't interfere with your future. I intercepted her letters, her calls. I paid for her to disappear. You did what? Henrique's voice was dangerously quiet. I offered her money to leave you alone. A substantial amount. She refused. Said she only wanted to talk to you, so I had to take more direct measures. Julia gasped. You threatened me. You said if I contacted Henrique again, you would make sure I lost my scholarship, that I would never graduate. And it worked, Eduardo said with a cold smile. Until now. Henrique felt rage building inside him. You had no right. I had every right. I was protecting you from making a terrible mistake. Eduardo glanced at the babies. Though it seems your brother made that mistake instead. Those are Andre's, aren't they? I can see the resemblance. Before anyone could respond, the elevator chimed again, and Andre Vasconcelos stepped into the tense scene. He froze when he saw Julia holding Sophia. What is going on here? Apparently, Eduardo said sarcastically, it's a family reunion. Andre's face paled. Julia, what are you doing here? She's here because I brought her here, Henrique answered, his voice tight with anger. Along with her daughter, my daughter Maria, and the twins, your children, Andre. Andre looked from Julia to his father to Henrique, panic in his eyes. I can explain. Save it, Henrique cut him off. There's nothing you can say that would justify abandoning your own children. Like you're one to talk, Andre shot back. You didn't even know you had a daughter until yesterday, I'm guessing. At least I knew about the twins. And you chose to walk away, Enrique said. You chose to give Julia money for an abortion instead of taking responsibility. I was following in your footsteps, big brother, Andre said bitterly. You always taught me that nothing should get in the way of success. Isn't that what you did with Julia 20 years ago? The accusation hit Enrique hard because there was truth in it. He had put his ambition first. He had chosen his career over love, and in doing so he had set an example for his younger brother to follow. You're right, Enrique admitted. I made a terrible mistake, but I'm trying to fix it now, and you need to fix yours too. Eduardo slammed his cane on the floor, drawing everyone's attention. Enough of this nonsense. Both of you need to remember who you are and what's at stake. The company is just a company, Enrique interrupted. These are people, family, something you apparently never understood. Don't take that tone with me, boy, Eduardo warned. I built the Vasconcelos empire from nothing. Everything you have, you owe to me. No, Enrique said. Everything I have, I built myself, despite you, not because of you. Eduardo's face reddened with anger. You ungrateful, I think you should leave, Enrique said firmly. All the business matters can wait. Right now, this is about family. If you choose them over your responsibilities, Eduardo threatened, you can consider yourself removed from the company, from the family. Enrique looked at Julia, at the babies, and thought of Maria. Then he looked back at his father. If that's my choice, then I've already made it. Eduardo stared at his son in disbelief. Then, without another word, he turned and walked to the elevator, his back rigid with fury. As the doors closed behind him, Andre let out a shaky breath. You just committed corporate suicide. Maybe, Enrique agreed. But for the first time in 20 years, I feel like I'm doing something right. He turned to face his brother. Now we need to talk about your responsibilities to your children. Andre looked at the twins, real fear in his eyes. I don't know how to be a father. Neither do I, Enrique admitted. But we're going to learn. Together. Outside the penthouse windows, the sun broke through the morning clouds, filling the room with light. It felt, to Enrique at least, like the beginning of something new, something real, something worth fighting for. A week passed at Enrique's penthouse. The initial awkwardness slowly gave way to a tentative routine. Each morning, Enrique would help with the twins before heading to his home office to deal with the fallout from his father's threats. Each evening, he would join them for dinner, eager to hear about their day. Maria still went to her jobs, refusing to quit despite Enrique's offers of financial support, but she had agreed to consider returning to medical school for the next semester. Andre had visited twice more, each time looking uncomfortable around the twins. He would hold them briefly, then make excuses to leave. Enrique found his brother's reluctance infuriating, but understood it would take time. On Friday evening, as Enrique returned from a tense meeting with the company's board, he found Julia sitting alone on the balcony. The twins are asleep, he asked, loosening his tie. Finally, she said with a tired smile. They're teething, makes them fussy. Enrique sat down. Beside her, and Maria. Night shift at the supermarket. She'll be home around midnight. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city lights. How was your meeting? Julia finally asked. Enrique sighed. Not good. My father has turned most of the board against me. They're threatening to vote me out as CEO if I don't come to my senses, as they put it. I'm sorry. This is all because of us, isn't it? No, Enrique said firmly. It's because my father can't stand not being in control. He's been looking for an excuse to push me out since I disagreed with his expansion plans last year. What will you do? Fight. Enrique looked at her. I built that company into what it is today. I'm not going to let him take it away. Julia touched his hand lightly. I believe in you, I always did. The simple statement warmed him more than he expected. Thank you. That means a lot. Her phone buzzed with a text message. She checked it and frowned. What is it? Enrique asked. It's from the hospital. My 6-month checkup results. They want me to come in on Monday to discuss them. Enrique felt a chill. Is that normal? No, Julia admitted. Usually they just call if everything is fine. I'll go with you, he said immediately. You don't have to. I want to, he insisted. You don't have to do this alone anymore, Julia. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Thank you. Inside the penthouse, Lucas began to cry. The sound came through the baby monitor on the table. I'll get him, Enrique offered, standing up. As he walked to the nursery, he heard the elevator chime. Thinking it was probably Maria home early, he was surprised to see André step into the living room. André, what are you doing here so late? His brother looked terrible. His clothes rumpled, his eyes bloodshot. I need to talk to you. What's wrong? André ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Father is making his move. He called an emergency board meeting for Monday morning. They're going to vote you out. He can't do that without cause, Enrique replied, though he felt a twinge of worry. He says he has cause. He's claiming you're mentally unstable, making rash decisions because of personal issues. The baby's cries grew louder. Enrique sighed. I need to check on Lucas. Come with me. In the nursery, Enrique picked up the crying baby, rocking him gently. You're good with him, André observed, standing awkwardly in the doorway. It's not that hard once you get used to it, Enrique replied. You could be good with them too, if you tried. André stepped closer, looking at his son with a mixture of fear and wonder. I don't know if I can be what they need. None of us do at first, Enrique said. But we learn. He held Lucas out. Here, take him. After a moment's hesitation, André took the baby. Lucas quieted almost immediately, looking up at his father with curious eyes. See? He knows who you are, Enrique said softly. André swallowed. Hard. What if I mess up? What if I'm like our father? You won't be, because you're asking that question. Enrique put a hand on his brother's shoulder. We're both going to do better than he did. Julia appeared in the doorway, stopping short when she saw André holding Lucas. I heard crying, she explained. André looked up, his expression apologetic. Julia, I'm sorry for everything. She nodded cautiously. Are you going to be part of their lives now? I want to try, André replied, looking down at Lucas. If you'll let me. They need a father, she said simply. Both of you should have a chance to be that for them. The moment was interrupted by the sound of the front door opening and Maria's voice calling out, Mom, I'm home early. The manager let us go because business was slow. She appeared behind Julia, stopping abruptly when she saw André. Her expression hardened. What's he doing here? Maria, Julia began, but André spoke up. I deserve that, he said. I ran away when I found out about the twins. It was wrong. Maria crossed her arms. So now you want to play daddy? After Mom had to live in a shelter because you disappeared? Maria, please, Julia tried again. No, she's right, André said. I was a coward. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking for a chance to do better. Maria looked from André to Enrique, her expression bitter. Like father, like son, I guess. The Vasconcelos men are good at running away, aren't they? The words hit both men hard. Enrique because they were true, André because they connected him to the mistake his brother had made years ago. We're also good at fighting when it matters, Enrique said quietly. And this, all of you, matter more than anything. Maria's expression softened slightly. Words are easy. You're right, Enrique agreed. Actions are what count. That's why I want to help you go back to medical school. I can't just abandon my responsibilities. The twins will have all of us, Enrique finished for her. Me, your mother, and André. You've put your life on hold. Long enough, Maria. Let us help you now. Something in his tone must have reached her because her defensive posture relaxed slightly. I'll think about it. Later that night, after André had left and the twins were asleep again, Enrique found Maria sitting in the kitchen with a cup of tea. Can't sleep, he asked, taking a seat across from her. Too much on my mind, she replied. I've been looking at the medical school application. The deadline for the spring semester is next week. You should apply, Enrique encouraged. You're meant to be a doctor, Maria. It's your dream. She looked at him curiously. How would you know what my dream is? Your mother told me. She's very proud of you. Maria stared into her tea. When I was little, I used to make up stories about you, about why you weren't with us." "What kind of stories?" Enrique asked gently. "That you were a secret agent on an important mission, or that you were lost at sea and couldn't find your way back to us." She gave a small, sad laugh. "Anything but the truth, that you just didn't want us." "That wasn't the truth," Enrique said, his heart aching. "I didn't know about you. If I had, would you really have come back?" The question hung between them, heavy with years of abandonment and hurt. "Yes," Enrique said firmly, in a heartbeat. "You and your mother, you were the best thing that ever happened to me. I was too young and stupid to realize it then, but I know it now." Maria looked at him, really looked at him, as if trying to see into his soul. "I want to believe you." "Then believe this," Enrique said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a folded photograph, worn at the edges. "I've carried this with me for 20 years. He handed it to Maria. It was a picture of a young Enrique and Julia, arms around each other, laughing in front of a fountain. "You kept this?" Maria asked, surprised. "It was all I had left of her," Enrique admitted. "Of the happiest time in my life." Maria ran her finger over the image of her mother, so young and carefree. "She loved you so much," she said quietly. "Even after you were gone, she would talk about you sometimes, never with bitterness, just sadness." "I never stopped loving her," Enrique confessed. "I just got lost along the way, caught up in proving myself to a father who could never be satisfied." Maria handed the photograph back. "I have a picture of you too. Mom gave it to me when I was 10 and asked who my father was." Enrique felt his throat tighten. "You do?" She nodded. "It's in my room. I'll show you sometime." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. A tiny opening in the wall she had built. "I'd like that," Enrique said softly. The next morning, Enrique was awakened by the sound of his phone, ringing. It was Patricia, his assistant. "Mr. Vasconcelos, I'm sorry to call so early on a Saturday, but there's a situation at the office. Your father has called security and had your access revoked." Enrique sat up, instantly alert. "What?" "He's claiming that as chairman of the board, he has the right to restrict your access pending the vote on Monday. He's also frozen your corporate accounts. That's illegal. He can't do that without a formal vote. He says he has enough proxy votes already. Mr. Vasconcelos, I'm worried. This doesn't look good." Enrique ran a hand through his hair, thinking quickly. "Patricia, I need you to send me all the files on Project Phoenix and the Meridian acquisition. Use my personal email, not the company one." "Already done, sir. I anticipated this might happen." "You're a lifesaver, Patricia. What would I do without you?" "Let's hope you don't have to find out, sir. There's one more thing. Your father has scheduled a press conference for this afternoon. I think he's going to publicly announce the leadership change." "He's moving faster than I expected," Enrique murmured. "All right, keep me posted. And Patricia, thank you." After hanging up, Enrique sat on the edge of his bed, weighing his options. His father was trying to back him into a corner, force him to choose between the company and his newly discovered family. But Enrique refused to make that choice. He wanted, needed, both. He dressed quickly and found Julia in the kitchen, making breakfast for the twins. "We need to talk," he said. "It's about my father." He explained the situation while helping her feed the babies. Julia listened attentively, her concern growing. "What are you going to do?" she asked when he finished. "Fight back," Enrique replied. "But I need to move quickly. I'm going to call an emergency press conference of my own before my father's." "What will you say?" "The truth, that my father is attempting a hostile takeover out of spite and control. And I'm going to counter with something he won't expect." Maria walked in, overhearing the last part. "What's going on?" Enrique explained the situation again. To his surprise, Maria's reaction was immediate and supportive. "That's ridiculous," she said indignantly. "He can't just push you out of your own company." "He's trying," Enrique replied, "but I won't let him." "What can we do to help?" Maria asked. The "we" not lost on Enrique. "Actually, there is something. It's a lot to ask, but it would make a powerful statement." "What is it?" Julia asked. "I want you all to stand with me at the press conference." Show the world that this isn't just about business, it's about family. Julia and Maria exchanged looks. It was Maria who spoke first. You want to use us as props in your corporate war? No, Enrique said quickly. I want to show my father, and everyone, what I'm fighting for. Not just the company, but the right to have both a career and a family. Something he never understood. Julia touched his arm gently. Enrique exposing the children to that kind of public scrutiny. You're right, he said, immediately backing down. It was a bad idea. I'll handle this on my own. I didn't say. No, Julia clarified. I just want to make sure you've thought it through. The press will be brutal. They'll dig into everything. My cancer, the shelter, Maria's jobs. And the fact that the twins are Andre's, not yours, Maria added. It could get ugly. Enrique hadn't considered all the implications. You're right. Forget I suggested it. This is my battle, not yours. He called his public relations team and arranged for a press conference at 11 a.m., 2 hours before his father's scheduled announcement. Then he spent the morning preparing his statement and gathering evidence of his father's underhanded tactics. As he was about to leave for the press conference, Julia stopped him at the door. Wait, she said. We've been talking, Maria and I. Maria stood beside her mother, the twins in a double stroller. We're coming with you. Enrique looked at them in surprise. Are you sure? You don't have to do this. We know, Julia said. But family stands together. Isn't that what you've been saying? The simple words echoing his own touched him deeply. Yes, it is. Then let's go face the wolves together, Maria said with determination. The press conference was held in the grand ballroom of the Vasconcelos building. By the time Enrique arrived with Julia, Maria, and the twins, the room was packed with reporters and cameras. A murmur went through the crowd as they entered. Patricia, waiting near the podium, looked startled but quickly recovered, guiding them to seats at the front. Are you sure about this? She whispered to Enrique. Never been more sure of anything, he replied. As he took the podium, camera flashes erupted. He waited for the initial frenzy to die down before speaking. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I'm sure many of you are wondering why I called this press conference. There have been rumors circulating about the future leadership of Vasconcelos Enterprises. He paused, taking a deep breath. Those rumors are partially true. My father, Eduardo Vasconcelos Sr., has indeed called for a vote to remove me as CEO. What hasn't been mentioned is why. More cameras flashed as reporters leaned forward eagerly. 20 years ago, I made a mistake. I chose ambition over love. I left behind the woman I loved to pursue my career. What I didn't know was that she was pregnant with my child. Gasps and whispers spread through the crowd. Last week, by what can only be called a miracle, I found them again. He gestured to Julia and Maria. This is Julia Almeida, the woman I should have married 20 years ago. And this is Maria, my daughter, whom I'm meeting for the first time in her adult life. The reporters erupted with questions, but Enrique held up his hand for silence. There's more to the story. The twins with them are not mine. They are my brother Andre's children. When Julia told him she was pregnant, he abandoned her, just as I had done years before. It seems running away from responsibility was a family tradition. He looked directly at the cameras. But not anymore. I am publicly acknowledging my daughter and my responsibility to help raise my brother's children. This is my family, and I will not abandon them again. The ballroom doors burst open, and Eduardo Vasconcelos Sr. stormed in, his face red with fury. Andre followed close behind, looking anxious. What is the meaning of this? Eduardo demanded, approaching the podium. Enrique stood his ground. I'm telling the truth, Father. Something you might try sometime. Eduardo grabbed the microphone. This man is emotionally unstable and unfit to lead Vasconcelos Enterprises. The board will vote on Monday to... The board won't be voting on anything, came a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Carlos Mendez, Enrique's friend and a major shareholder, walking down the center aisle. I've spoken with the other independent board members, Carlos announced. We agree that Eduardo's actions constitute a breach of corporate governance. We're calling for his immediate removal as chairman. Eduardo looked stunned. You can't do that. I founded this company. And your son built it into what it is today, Carlos replied. The financials speak for themselves, Eduardo. Under Henrique's leadership, company value has tripled. The board has no intention of removing a successful CEO because of his personal life. Andre stepped forward, taking everyone by surprise. I second the motion to remove my father as chairman. Eduardo turned to his younger son, his expression one of utter betrayal. Andre? You too? I'm tired of the manipulation, father. Of the control. Andre moved to stand beside Henrique. We're not going to be like you anymore. Family comes first. He looked at the twins in their stroller, then at Julia. All of our family. The reporters were in a frenzy now, cameras flashing, questions being shouted, but Henrique only had eyes for his father, who suddenly looked old and defeated. This isn't over, Eduardo said, his voice low and threatening. You'll regret this, both of you. No, father, Henrique replied calmly. The only thing I regret is not standing up to you 20 years ago. If I had, maybe my life would have been very different. As Eduardo stormed out, Andre turned to the reporters. I want to make an official statement. I am the father of these twins, Lucas and Sophia. I failed in my responsibilities to them and their mother, but from this day forward, I intend to be the father they deserve. Henrique put his hand on his brother's shoulder, a gesture of support and unity. Then he walked over to where Julia and Maria sat with the twins. He knelt down in front of them, ignoring the cameras. Thank you, he said softly, for standing with me. Maria's eyes were shining with unshed tears. That was impressive. I meant every word, Henrique assured her. I know, she replied. That's what made it impressive. As the press conference concluded, Henrique, Julia, Maria, and Andre with the twins exited together, presenting a united front to the flashing cameras. It wasn't the perfect, happy family yet, but it was a beginning. Back at the penthouse, while the twins napped and Maria made lunch, Henrique and Julia found themselves alone on the balcony again. You were amazing today, Julia said, standing up to your father like that. It was long overdue, Henrique replied, and I couldn't have done it without you and Maria there. She's starting to like you, Julia said with a small smile. She won't admit it yet, but I can tell. And what about you, Henrique asked, his voice soft. Is there any chance that we could... Julia looked out at the city for a long moment before turning back to him. I never stopped loving you, Henrique, but love isn't always enough. It can be, he said, taking her hand. If we let it. We're different people now. We need to get to know each other again. I would like that very much, Henrique said, his heart feeling lighter than it had in years. Inside, Maria watched them from the kitchen window. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine what it might be like to have both her parents together. To be a real family. The thought was both terrifying and wonderful. Her phone buzzed with a text from the hospital where she had volunteered. They were offering her a part-time position as a medical assistant. It would be perfect with her school schedule if she went back. She looked at the medical school application on the counter, then back at her parents on the balcony. Perhaps it was time to believe in second chances. In his downtown office, Eduardo Vasconcelos Sr. stared out the window, his jaw tight with anger. On his desk was a folder with the label, Top Secret, Operation Divide and Conquer. They think they've won, he muttered to himself, but they have no idea what I'm capable of. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. It's me. The situation has changed. I need you to dig deeper, find something, anything we can use against her. As he hung up, a cold smile spread across his face. He wasn't finished yet, not by a long shot. Monday would bring Julia's hospital appointment and, unknown to all of them, the beginning of a new battle. One that would test their newly formed family bonds to the breaking point. Monday morning arrived with grey skies and a sense of foreboding. Henrique and Julia sat in the waiting room of the oncology department, neither speaking their fears aloud. Ms. Almeida, called a nurse. Doctor, Mendez will see you now. Henrique squeezed Julia's hand. I'll be right here with you. Dr. Mendez was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a serious expression. She gestured for them to sit down in her office. Thank you for coming in, Julia, she said. And you must be Henrique Vasconcelos, he introduced himself. Julia's partner. The word felt inadequate, but Julia gave him a small smile of appreciation. "I wish I had better news," Dr. Mendez began, her tone immediately setting off alarm bells in Henrique's mind. "The latest scans show some concerning shadows in your lungs." Julia's hand tightened around Henrique's. "The cancer has spread? We can't be certain without a biopsy, but yes, that's what we suspect. Stage 4 breast cancer with metastasis to the lungs." The clinical words hung in the air like a death sentence. Henrique felt as if he couldn't breathe. "What are the treatment options?" he asked, his voice strained. "We'll need to start aggressive chemotherapy immediately, combined with targeted radiation and immunotherapy, but I have to be honest with you, the 5-year survival rate for stage 4 breast cancer with lung metastasis is around 22%. Julia nodded slowly, her face pale but composed. "And if the treatment doesn't work?" "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Dr. Mendez said gently. "Many patients respond well to the new protocols." "But if it doesn't work?" Julia persisted. "How long would I have?" The doctor hesitated. "Without treatment, 6 to 12 months. With treatment but no response, perhaps 18 months to 2 years. Henrique felt the floor shift beneath him. He had just found Julia again, just discovered his daughter, just started to build the family he should have had all along. And now this cruel twist of fate threatened to take it all away. "When do we start?" Julia asked, her voice surprisingly steady. "I'd like to schedule the biopsy for tomorrow. Once we have the results, we can begin chemotherapy by the end of the week." On the drive home, Julia stared out the window in silence. Henrique wanted desperately to say something comforting, but the words wouldn't come. What could he possibly say that would make this better? "We should wait to tell Maria," Julia finally spoke. "She has her medical school interview tomorrow. I don't want to distract her." "Julia," Henrique began, his voice breaking, "I just found you again. I can't lose you." "You're not going to lose me," she replied, turning to look at him. "I'm going to fight this with everything I have. I have too much to live for now." When they arrived at the penthouse, they found Maria playing with the twins in the living room. She looked up with a bright smile that quickly faded when she saw their expressions. "What happened?" she asked, alarm in her voice. "What did the doctor say?" Julia forced a smile. "Nothing definitive yet. They need to run more tests." Maria's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Mom, what aren't you telling me?" "We can talk about it after your interview tomorrow," Julia insisted. "Right now, you need to focus on that." "No, I need to know what's going on," Maria countered. "I'm not a child." Henrique and Julia exchanged looks. There was no hiding this from Maria. She was too perceptive, too familiar with her mother's health journey. "The cancer may have spread to my lungs," Julia admitted. "They're doing a biopsy tomorrow to confirm." Maria's face crumpled. She had been through this once before with her mother, had watched her suffer through the treatments, had feared losing her, and now it was happening again. "It's going to be okay," Julia said, moving to embrace her daughter. "We caught it early." "Don't lie to me," Maria whispered. "Please don't lie to me." "We're going to fight this," Henrique said, his voice firm, with determination. "Together, the best doctors, the most advanced treatments, whatever it takes." That night, after Maria had gone to bed and the twins were asleep, Henrique made a series of phone calls to cancer specialists in New York, London, São Paulo, to researchers working on experimental treatments. Money was no object. He would spend every penny he had if it meant saving Julia. When he finally came to bed, he found Julia sitting up waiting for him. "You can't buy your way out of this, Henrique," she said gently. "I have to try," he replied, sitting beside her. "I can't just sit back and do nothing." "I'm scared too," she admitted. "But I've faced this before. I know what to expect." "You weren't alone then, and you won't be alone now," Henrique promised, taking her hands in his. "Maria was there for you last time. This time you have both of us." Julia's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not afraid for myself. I'm afraid for Maria and the twins. Who will take care of them if—" "Don't," Henrique stopped her. "Don't even think that way. You're going to beat this." "But if I don't," she persisted, "I need to know they'll be okay." "They will be," he assured her. "I promise you. But that's not going to happen because you're going to get through this." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, as if he could protect her from the disease that was threatening to take her away from him. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. I never stopped loving you, even when I thought I'd never see you again. I love you too, she replied softly. I wish we hadn't lost so much time. We haven't lost anything, Enrique said firmly. This is just the beginning for us. The next morning, as Julia prepared for her biopsy, Maria got ready for her medical school interview. She had insisted on going despite the situation with her mother. They only offer these interviews once a semester, she explained. I have to go. Of course you do, Julia agreed. I'll be fine. Enrique will be with me. Maria looked at Enrique, who was making coffee in the kitchen. Over the past week, her attitude toward him had softened considerably. Not quite acceptance, but no longer outright rejection. Take care of her, she said to him. Call me the second you hear anything. I will, he promised, and good luck with your interview. You're going to be an amazing doctor, Maria. A fleeting smile crossed her face before she gathered her things and left. At the hospital, Enrique waited anxiously while Julia underwent the biopsy. The procedure itself was relatively simple, but the waiting for results would be excruciating. Mr. Vasconcelos? A nurse approached him in the waiting room. There's a call for you at the reception desk. They say it's urgent. Confused, Enrique followed her to the reception area and took the phone. Hello? Enrique, it's Patricia. I'm sorry to bother you at the hospital, but there's something you need to know right away. What is it? Your father, she hesitated. He's called a press conference for this afternoon. We just got word that he's going to reveal something about Julia, something he claims will shock the business community and the public. Enrique felt a surge of anger. What could he possibly have to say about Julia? I don't know, but he seems confident it will change everything. Enrique, I'm worried. He wouldn't be doing this unless he had something substantial. Keep me posted, Enrique said tersely. And Patricia, see if you can find out what he's planning. To reveal. As he hung up, a cold feeling settled in his stomach. His father was vindictive and ruthless when crossed. Whatever he was planning, it wouldn't be good. Julia returned from the procedure looking tired but calm. All done, she said. Now we wait for the results. Enrique forced a smile, not wanting to worry her with news about his father's latest scheme. Let's get you home to rest. On the drive back to the penthouse, Enrique's phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Can't confirm details, but your father has hired a private investigator to look into Julia's past. Something about financial fraud. His jaw tightened. Financial fraud? Julia was the most honest person he knew. Whatever his father thought he had found was either a mistake or an outright fabrication. At the penthouse, Enrique helped Julia settle on the sofa. Andre had come by to watch the twins and was feeding them in the kitchen. I need to step out for a little while, Enrique told Julia. Will you be okay with Andre? Of course, she assured him. Where are you going? To take care of something. At the office, nothing important. The lie tasted bitter in his mouth, but he didn't want to worry her. Not now, when her health was the priority. Once in his car, he called Carlos Mendez. I need a favor, he said without preamble. My father is planning some kind of attack on Julia at his press conference today. I need to know what he thinks. He has on her. I'll see what I can find out, Carlos promised. But Enrique, be careful. Your father is desperate, and desperate men do dangerous things. Enrique drove directly to his father's penthouse, determined to confront him face to face. The doorman tried to stop him, saying Mr. Vasconcelos Sr. had left instructions not to admit his son, but Enrique brushed past him to the private elevator. Eduardo was in his study, reviewing documents with his lawyer when Enrique burst in. Whatever you think you know about Julia, you're wrong, Enrique said, his voice tight with anger. Eduardo looked up, surprisingly calm. Am I? I wonder if you know her as well as you think you do. She's the mother of my child. She's honest, kind, and far better than you could ever understand. Eduardo pushed a folder across the desk. Then explained this. Enrique opened it and found financial records from a charity organization called Children's Future Foundation. The documents appeared to show that Julia, as financial administrator, had diverted nearly $500,000 to personal accounts over a 3-year period. This is a lie, Enrique said immediately. Julia would never steal, especially not from a children's charity. The evidence says otherwise, Eduardo replied coldly. The signatures are hers. The accounts were opened in her name. She was fired when they discovered the discrepancies, but they agreed not to press charges if she returned what was left of the money, which wasn't much. When was this supposed to have happened? Enrique demanded. 5 to 8 years ago, while she was married to Eduardo Ramirez. Enrique's mind raced. That would have been during Julia's marriage, before her cancer diagnosis. It's a forgery, he insisted. Someone set her up. Perhaps, Eduardo conceded with a shrug, but the public won't see it that way when I release these documents this afternoon. They'll see a woman who stole from children, who's now trying to get her hands on the Vasconcelos' fortune. You bastard, Enrique growled. You'll destroy her reputation over a corporate power play? Business is business, Eduardo replied coldly. You chose her over your family and your responsibilities. Now you'll pay the price. If you do this, Enrique warned, I will never speak to you again. You will never see your grandchildren. Yes, grandchildren. Those twins are your blood too, through Andre. For a moment, something flickered in Eduardo's eyes. Perhaps doubt, perhaps a hint of the human being that still existed somewhere inside him. But it vanished quickly. The press conference is at 3. You have until then to decide where your true loyalties lie. Enrique left his father's penthouse with the file clutched in his hand. He needed to talk to Julia to understand what these documents meant. But first he called Carlos. I need everything you can find on the Children's Future Foundation from 5 to 8 years ago, and on Julia's ex-husband, Eduardo Ramirez. Back at his own penthouse, Enrique found Julia napping on the sofa while Andre played with the twins on the floor nearby. How is she? Enrique asked quietly. Tired, but okay, Andre replied. The doctor called. The initial results from the biopsy will be ready tomorrow morning. Enrique nodded, his mind still on the documents in the file. Andre, I need to ask you something. Did you ever hear anything about Julia being involved in financial improprieties at a charity? Andre looked surprised. No, never. Why? Father is planning to accuse her of embezzlement at his press conference today. He has documents that appear to show she stole money from a children's charity. That's ridiculous, Andre said immediately. Julia wouldn't do that. She's one of the most honest people I've ever met. I know, Enrique agreed, but the evidence looks convincing. The signatures match hers. Andre's expression darkened. This is low, even for father. Going after a woman with cancer. I need to talk to her about it, Enrique said, but I don't want to stress her out right now. You have to tell her, Andre insisted. She deserves to know what's coming. Before Enrique could respond, his phone rang. It was Carlos. Enrique, I think I found something, Carlos said without preamble. The Children's Future Foundation was a small charity run by Eduardo Ramirez's sister. It shut down about 5 years ago amid financial scandals. And Julia worked there? She was listed as the financial administrator, yes, but here's the interesting part. Eduardo Ramirez had signature authority on all the foundation's accounts. And after the foundation collapsed, he suddenly bought a vacation home in the Bahamas. Enrique's pulse quickened. He set her up. It looks that way, Carlos agreed, but proving it won't be easy, especially in the court of public opinion. As Enrique hung up, he turned to find Julia standing in the doorway, looking pale but resolute. I heard enough, she said quietly. Your father is going to accuse me of stealing from the foundation, isn't he? Enrique nodded grimly. I'm so sorry, Julia. We'll fight this. I know you're innocent. She came to sit beside him, taking the file from his hands and opening it. I wondered if this would ever catch up to me, she said, her voice sad but not surprised. You knew about this? Enrique asked, confused. I discovered the missing funds during a routine audit, she explained. When I confronted Eduardo about it, he admitted he had taken the money to cover gambling debts. He promised to pay it back, before anyone noticed. But he didn't, Andre guessed. No, instead he forged my signature on withdrawal forms to make it look like I had taken the money. By the time I realized what he had done, it was too late. His sister believed him over. To me, they agreed not to press charges if I returned what was left of the money. I had to empty my savings account. Why didn't you fight it? Enrique asked. Take legal action? I had no proof it was Eduardo, not me, and Maria was 14 at the time. I couldn't put her through a public scandal, possibly see her mother. Go to jail for something she didn't do. Julia looked at the documents sadly. So I paid, signed a confidentiality agreement, and tried to rebuild my life. Henrique felt a new wave of anger toward his father. He's using this to try to destroy your reputation, to force me back in line. What are you going to do? Julia asked. Fight back, Henrique said firmly. But I need your help. Are you up for one more battle? A determined look crossed her face. Always. They spent the next hour formulating a plan. Carlos would help gather evidence about Eduardo Ramirez's sudden wealth after the foundation's collapse. Andre would reach out to former board members of the charity who might have had suspicions about the real culprit, and Henrique would confront his father one last time before the press conference. Just as they were finalizing the details, Maria burst through the door, her face flushed with excitement. I got in, she exclaimed. They're offering me a full scholarship to return next semester. Her enthusiasm faded as she took in the serious expressions on their faces. What's wrong? Is it the biopsy results already? No, sweetheart, Julia said. Something else has come up. But first, congratulations. I'm so proud of you. She hugged her daughter tightly while Henrique explained the situation. With his father's planned accusations, Maria's face hardened with anger. That's insane. Mum would never steal from anyone, especially not a children's charity. We know that, Henrique assured her. And we're going to make sure everyone else knows it too. Maria looked at her mother with concern. But with your health situation, is this fight worth it? Some things are always worth fighting for, Julia replied. The truth, justice, family. She looked at Henrique. Love. The word hung in the air between them, simple yet profound. Despite everything, the years apart, the illness, the threats, they had found their way back to each other. And this time, nothing would tear them apart. Going to confront my father, Henrique said. Try one more time to appeal to whatever humanity he has left. I'm coming with you, Maria declared, her tone brooking no argument. He should see the people he's trying to hurt. No, Julia said quickly. It's too dangerous. Your grandfather? He's not a good man, Maria. All the more reason for me to go, Maria insisted. He needs to look me in the eye and explain why he's attacking my mother. Henrique felt a surge of pride in his daughter's courage. She's right. It's time my father faced the consequences of his actions directly. They left Andre with Julia and the twins, promising to return before the press conference. On the drive to Eduardo's penthouse, Henrique glanced at Maria in the passenger seat. You're very brave, he said, standing up to a man you've never met who happens to be your grandfather. Family isn't just about blood, she replied. It's about who stands by you when things get tough. He may be my grandfather by blood, but he's never been family. When they arrived at Eduardo's building, the doorman tried again to block their entry, but Henrique was resolute. Either you let us up, or I'll call the police and report that my father is in possession of forged documents he intends to use for slander. The doorman hesitated, then stepped aside. Eduardo was in his study again, this time alone, reviewing his notes for the press conference. He looked up in annoyance when Henrique entered, then froze when he saw Maria. Who is this? He demanded. Though the answer was written clearly on her face, the Vasconcelos' chin, the determined set of her shoulders. This is Maria, Henrique said. My daughter. Your granddaughter. Eduardo stared at her, momentarily speechless. For a man who prided himself on being in control, the shock was evident. So, he finally said, you look like your father. I look like my mother, Maria corrected sharply. And I have her integrity too, which is why I can't understand how you could accuse her of stealing when you know it's a lie. Eduardo's eyes narrowed. Young lady, you don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about, Maria shot back. My mother discovered that her husband was stealing from the foundation. He framed her to save himself, and now you're trying to use that lie to hurt her again. Where's your proof? Eduardo challenged. Where's yours? Maria countered. Those forged signatures wouldn't hold up under expert analysis, and we have witnesses ready to testify that Eduardo Ramirez suddenly came into money right after the foundation collapsed. It was a bluff. They didn't have witnesses yet, but the uncertainty that flickered across Eduardo's face suggested the accusation hit close to the mark. "Father," Enrique said, his voice quieter now, "you've fought me on business decisions. You've tried to control my life. But this crosses a line. Julia is fighting cancer. Stage 4, the cancer has spread to her lungs." For the first time, Eduardo looked genuinely taken aback. "Cancer?" "Yes," Maria confirmed, her voice breaking slightly. "She may have less than 2 years to live. And you want to destroy her reputation during the time she has left? What kind of monster does that?" Eduardo sat heavily in his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 70 years. "I didn't know about the cancer," he said, almost to himself. "Would it have made a difference?" Enrique asked. Eduardo didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "I lost your mother to cancer, breast cancer that spread to her lungs. It was devastating." It was the first time in years Enrique had heard his father mention his mother's death with any emotion. Usually, it was stated as a simple fact, not the tragedy. It had been. "Then you know what Julia is facing," Enrique said. "What we're all facing." Eduardo looked at Maria, really looked at her. "You have your grandmother's eyes," he said softly. "She was stubborn too. Wouldn't take no for an answer." "Another trait I get from my mother," Maria replied, but her tone had softened slightly. Eduardo turned back to Enrique. "What do you want from me?" "Cancel the press conference," Enrique said. "Destroy these documents and stop trying to force me out of the company. And in return, you get a chance to know your granddaughter and your great-grandchildren, a chance to be part of a family again." Eduardo was silent for a long moment. Then, without a word, he picked up his phone and dialed. "Cancel the press conference," he instructed his assistant, "all of it, and destroy the press packets." As he hung up, he looked at Enrique and Maria. "I don't make promises I can't keep. I need time to consider all this." It wasn't a full surrender, but it was a start. A crack in the armor of a man who had spent decades building walls around himself. "Take the time you need," Enrique said. "We'll be here when you're ready." Back at the penthouse, they found Julia anxiously waiting for news. When they told her Eduardo had cancelled the press conference, she sagged with relief. "Thank God," she said. "I wasn't sure my heart could take another public scandal." "He backed down when he heard about your cancer," Enrique explained. "It seems my father may have some humanity left after all." That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Julia, Enrique, Maria, Andre, and the twins, there was a sense of cautious optimism. One battle had been won, but the bigger fight against Julia's cancer was just beginning. After dinner, as Julia rested on the sofa, Enrique received a text from Patricia. "Your father has cancelled the board meeting for Monday. No vote on your position. Seems like you won." He showed the message to Julia, who smiled tiredly. "One less thing to worry about." "Now we focus on getting you better," he said, taking her hand. "Nothing else matters." "Enrique," she said softly, "I want you to be prepared for the possibility that—" "No," he interrupted. "I'm not going to lose you again. We're going to fight this together, and we're going to win." "But if we don't," she persisted, "I need to know that you'll take care of Maria and the twins." "I promise," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "But it won't come to that. You're going to watch Maria become a doctor. You're going to see the twins grow up. And you and I are going to grow old together." She smiled at his determination. "You always were stubborn." "I learned from the best," he replied, kissing her hand. "Now rest. Tomorrow we start the fight of our lives." The next morning, they returned to the hospital for the biopsy results. Dr. Mendez greeted them with a grave expression. "The results confirm what we suspected," she said. "The cancer has metastasized to your lungs, Julia, but there's something else we found that's concerning. There are also small spots on your liver." Enrique felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. "What does that mean for treatment?" "It makes it more complicated," Dr. Mendez admitted, "but not impossible. I've consulted with colleagues, and we believe an aggressive combination therapy is your best option." "Then that's what we'll do," Julia said with quiet determination. "I should warn you," the doctor continued, "the treatment will be extremely difficult. The side effects can be severe. I've been through it before, Julia reminded her. I know what to expect. On the drive home, Henrique pulled over suddenly and stopped the car. "Marry me," he said, turning to Julia. "What?" she asked, startled by the abrupt proposal. "Marry me," he repeated. "Now today, I don't want to waste another day." "Henrique, I'm sick, I might not—" "I don't care," he interrupted. "In sickness and in health, isn't that what people promise? I want to promise that to you. I want to be your husband for whatever. Time we have, a year, 10 years, 50 years," tears filled her eyes. "You don't have to do this out of pity or guilt." "This has nothing to do with pity or guilt," he insisted. "This is about love. I loved you 20 years ago and I love you now, even more. I want to fall asleep beside you every night and wake up with you every morning. I want to face whatever comes next together as husband and wife." "Yes," she whispered, her tears flowing freely now. "Yes, I'll marry you." That afternoon, in the garden of Henrique's penthouse, with Maria, Andre, and the twins as their only witnesses, Henrique and Julia were married by a judge who was an old friend of Carlos. The ceremony was simple but profoundly moving. "I've waited 20 years to make this promise," Henrique said, as he placed the ring on Julia's finger. "I will love you, support you, and stand by you, in sickness and in health, for all the days of my life." "And I promise to fight," Julia replied, her voice steady despite her tears. "To fight the cancer, to fight for our family, to fight for each day we can have together. I love you, Henrique. I always have." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, Maria wiped away tears of her own. The twins, oblivious to the significance of the moment, babbled happily in Andre's arms. Later that evening, as Julia rested, Henrique sat on the balcony with Maria. "Are you okay with all this?" he asked her. "The marriage, everything happening so fast?" "I've never seen her happier," Maria replied. "Even with the cancer diagnosis, there's a peace about her that wasn't there before. She finally has everything she ever wanted. Her health is the only missing piece. We're going to do everything possible to help her fight this," Henrique promised. "And no matter what happens, I want you to know that I'll always be here for you, not just as Julia's husband, but as your father. If you'll have me." Maria was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. "I think I'd like that," she said softly. "Dad." The word, so simple yet so profound, brought tears to Henrique's eyes. After 20 years of emptiness, of focusing on money and power at the expense of human connection, he had finally found what truly mattered: a family, love, purpose. Inside the penthouse, Julia stood in the doorway, watching them together. Despite the uncertainty of her future, her heart was full. Whatever happened, she would face it with the knowledge that her daughter would be cared for, that the twins would grow up surrounded by love, and that the great love of her life had finally returned to her. The days ahead would be difficult. Chemotherapy, radiation, the brutal fight against a disease that showed no mercy. But she wasn't fighting alone anymore. She had Henrique and Maria, Andre, and the twins. She had a family that had been brought together by chance and circumstance, by a rainy day and a visit to a shelter. And in that moment, standing in the doorway watching her husband and daughter together, Julia knew that whatever time she had left, whether it was months or years or decades, it would be filled with the love she had always dreamed of. 3 months later, Julia sat in Dr. Mendez's office once again, holding Henrique's hand as they waited for the latest scan results. The past 12 weeks had been brutal. The chemotherapy had taken its toll, leaving her weak and sick. But she had fought through it with a determination that amazed everyone around her. "The results are encouraging," Dr. Mendez said, a genuine smile on her face. "The tumors in your lungs have shrunk significantly, and the spots on your liver have almost disappeared." "Does that mean it's working?" Enrique asked, hardly daring to hope. "It means Julia is responding well to the treatment," the doctor confirmed. "Better than we expected. It's not a cure, but it's a very positive sign." Outside the hospital, Enrique lifted Julia into his arms and spun her around, mindful of her fragility but unable to contain his joy. "Did you hear that?" he said, laughing through his tears. "It's working." "I told you I would fight," she replied, her smile weak but genuine. "For you, for Maria, for our family. As they drove home to share the good news with Maria and André, Julia looked out at the city, the same city where, months ago, she had been living in a shelter with her daughter and her twin babies, unsure of their future. Now she was married to the love of her life, her daughter was back in medical school, and the twins were thriving in a home filled with love. Life had brought her, full circle, from love to loss and back to love again. The future was still uncertain. Cancer was an unpredictable enemy, but she faced it with hope and determination. "What are you thinking about?" Enrique asked, noticing her contemplative expression. Julia turned to him with a smile. "I was thinking about that rainy day when you walked into the shelter, how everything changed in an instant. The best day of my life," he said, taking her hand. "The day I found my way home." As the car pulled up to their building, they could see Maria waiting for them at the entrance, the twins in a stroller beside her. Their family, once lost, now found, once broken, now healing. Together, they would face whatever came next. One day at a time, the end.